right, it's 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We will start with a roll call. We have Bonnie Sears, Bridget Powers, myself, Rebecca Hanson, a welcome back to Bill Bolton, Chris Buckley, Marianne Barnsley, and Carol Fuckerell. Fuckerell. I apologize. I forget these guys all the time, so. And welcome to Carol as well.
Thank you.
We don't have minutes from our last meeting. I do have notes from Grace from the facilitated work session discussion that I'm going to send to Dawn, who does our minutes, so she can incorporate those. Bonnie, here's a copy for you. Thank you. If anyone else wants a copy to look at those as well, but we thought that those would be good to get those into the public record as well as part of the minutes. We will move right on to the public hearing, which is a request by Riverside Landing for an amended site plan approval of a previously approved site plan pertaining to an addition to the Irving gas station / convenience store development. This is on PID number 212-046-005 on Tenny Mountain Highway. The building and use will be expanded and branded as a common man presence.
Rebecca, I have to accuse myself from this because I'm in a butter.
Okay, Bonnie is accusing herself because she is in a butter. That leaves us with five.
You're all set.
All right, do we have a representative from the applicant to present the amended site plan review? If you don't mind just stepping up to the... Sure, yeah. It just helps our if you don't mind trying to stay possible close to the podium too. Is there a microphone nearby? Yeah, you can pop that thing forward too.
How you doing? I'm Ward D'Elia, Seaman D'Elia Architects in Ashland, New Hampshire. And I'm here representing Granite State Convenience, Tenny, which is Alex Ray, Leslie McClure, and Brad Purnell, who you know. And so why we're here is because the planning board approved this for Mike McGinley last June, this project, this lot, which is the gas station and convenience store. And since then, we've been in negotiation with Mike and Irving for Granite State Convenience to take over and run the convenience store and the Irving station. And in the course of reviewing the project and the opportunity, we looked at expanding the footprint of the building to be 1,329 square feet larger than what originally had been designed by Irving when they developed the site, and which was approved. So with that, and in the course of that, moving the propane tank and moving the trash dumpsters back a little bit, Brian said we should bring this to the planning board because it's changed enough that you should review it from your original approval. So we're here to do that. So nothing else is changing. And the difference between this utility site plan and the previous one is that since June, Market Basket is going to be moving in here. So the drainage did not show any of that before. So when Horizons updated this plan for us, showing the new footprint, they also incorporated all the changes that were the approval for Market Basket. So this is actually the final state-of-the-art site plan. A combination of Market Basket, utilities, site work, and the original Mike McGinley site plan. That's basically it. There's nothing else that's really different. And so we'd like to make this the approved planning board site plan that you take a vote on, and it will supersede the previous one, which was not as developed as this is.
Any questions from the board on the completeness? I'm not even sure if we have to do a completeness because it's an amendment. Why don't we, it's not actually an application.
No.
I guess we do have the application, so let's just, yeah, we do have the narrative.
All right, so that narrative, we left the original narrative in, and then we added, that was prepared by Will Davis from Horizons Engineering. And that describes the difference between the original layout and the current one.
Yeah, so let's go, just treat this as a normal site plan review, because we do have the application, just make sure that, any questions about the complete, we just want to make sure we're following our bylaws, so this, when we approve it, we actually are approving it, so, any questions about the completeness of this application? Or a motion?
Motion to accept the application as complete.
Second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
I'm sorry, who made the second?
I did.
Thank you.
all right, so any other further questions for the applicant?
Just curious, the additional space is going to be used for,
What would
the additional new space is going to be used for,
So, yeah, this is still a convenience store.
okay.
And the difference between the original convenience store and this one is that this will have a kitchen right out front where you can get some prepared food and you can eat it right there and take it home. And other than that, it's the same potato chips.
Good stuff.
Actually, common. You'll recognize it.
But you'll have seating,
Here.
you'll have seating inside, right?
Hmm?
You'll have seating inside the building itself?
There'll be some seating inside, and out here, in the summer, we'll have some seating also.
Okay. Yep.
I have a question about the decrease in impervious surface of 75 square feet. How did that math
I
work
was
out?
reading this over before I came over, and we're definitely under the 75%.
Mhm.
But I saw a decrease, and so I called Will Davis on his cell phone, and he didn't get back to me. So he didn't tell me why, but I think it has to do with some of the impervious areas over in this area.
Okay,
But otherwise, it's the same. It shouldn't.
yeah, but an increase in building size, but overall a decrease in impervious surfaces. It's actually nice to see this application come before us again now that everything else has been figured out in that middle section, so. Yeah. Other questions from the board? Okay. It is 6:38. I'm gonna open it up for a public hearing and invite any members of the public to come and speak of any nature about this project.
Frank Miller, and I stand in support of this new addition as I stood in support of the original. I believe it's in keeping with the character of the area of Route 25. Obviously, I think this change will enhance that building and the services provided, and I think it deserves consideration for approval. Thank you.
Good evening, Mike McGinley. I think we've got an opportunity for a beautiful building that will immensely help the town and people that are local to run it and obviously are well proven. So I would ask that we approve this and move on. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Fine.
I just have to say, as an abutter to all of this, I think it's great. Just want to give you my approval.
Thanks, Bonnie. Anyone else? 6:40, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Any other questions? Perhaps a motion?
I would make a motion that we accept the revamped, amended
Approve it?
What's that? Approve?
Yeah.
What did I say?
Accept.
Yeah, approve the application as amended.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the amended application signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Great, thank you.
Just because,
Yeah.
I know, so.
Did you want us to drag it out a little longer?
We could add some
We can
discussion.
drag it out. You want us to drag it out a little longer?
Carol said that I said, are we first? Yeah, you're first and last.
Yes.
Thank you for wearing a tie.
You're welcome.
Usually I get a little scared when I see people wearing ties to planning board meetings, but.
I had one.
Yeah, we gave it to Alex.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night. All right, well, since it is the first meeting after town meeting, we need to evict, I almost said evict our officer slate, which I guess is true, and re-elect a slate of officers, so chair, vice chair, and the ever-important non-recording secretary. Currently, I'm obviously the chair, Chris is the vice chair, and Bridget is the non-recording secretary.
We nominate people who aren't here.
I'm happy to continue in my role, but I am certainly not married to it. So I am happy to go either way. So if someone would like to propose either per position or an entire slate, is anyone itching to be chair?
Not today.
I'm itching not to be.
I like continuity, especially for a few years, because I think this is the kind of job, there's a learning curve and people learn more and get better at it. I think the rest of us also are learning at the same time, so, unless someone else wants vice chair, I would say we, or recording secretary, keep it as it is.
Non-recording secretary.
Non-recording.
Although we did make you record once,
I did.
so usually non-recording
Yeah.
secretary.
Semi.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
So that's your motion.
So I would move that we keep the slate of officers as is for another year.
I would second that.
Okay, so when we vote, it'll be myself as chair, Chris as vice chair, and Bridget as the non-recording secretary. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? I just hope my reign hasn't been fearful that anyone's afraid to, take me off my throne here. That's all I've got on the official agenda, which could end up being a very quick meeting, unless anyone's got, or actually, no, there are some updates from other boards and committees. Maybe we usually do that during the work session, but it sounds like there's some updates to give.
No, and so, Bonnie wasn't able to be there, so the Economic Development Committee, apparently short-lived, we met with the various business owners. Main Street business owners were invited for the conversation, and I guess the focus being on Main Street overall. And the intention initially was to sort of form a group of Main Street owners, and they would go off and do whatever Main Street owners do. But there was huge talk of parking, right? That's the biggest issue for everybody. It's just, right, everybody. Tourists, townies, right, everybody. So we decided to not move forward yet with the Main Street focus, because it didn't make a lot of sense to promote Main Street anymore without any parking. There were a couple ideas that were thought of. Brian had taken me on a tour of the town a couple weeks ago to look at various parking spots. And one that we think is a really good idea is between the senior center. So between the senior center and the highway department, if you're going down that way on the left-hand side, we were thinking that if, even just if owners had their employees park down there, that would certainly alleviate a lot. It looks like there's enough room for about 50 spots. Right now it's mud, snow and dirt. So obviously, would need to be, first would need to be approved. Apparently it's owned by the town, but the senior center uses it as the DPW also uses it to dump snow. Just sort of a handshake thing. So I guess there'll be hopefully some discussion around, us or Main Street using that as parking for everybody, but the initial was to let's try it out and get employees to park down there. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, it's my understanding that unless there's a parking space next to a building, there really is no employee parking.
No, there isn't any employee parking.
And employees, if they're having to park on Green Street, they're paying for it, which can be
Correct.
quite expensive,
Correct.
so.
Correct, and that was the idea of using it down there. Now, how, whether there are, not meters, what's the, kiosk type thing, permit, that hasn't been discussed that far. It was thrown out, I think, by Scott Biederman, can we just make it, at least try it out over the summer? So maybe put either, and Frank was there, take it as it is, the dirt, and just spray paint lines in it, right, and see if it actually does work. My only concern about thinking about that later is the lighting. Right? That was certainly thought of permanently, but this temporary thing, I don't park down there, but I park behind Rand's, I lease a spot, and I don't like walking behind there at night, so walking a little bit further. So I don't know if there's such thing as temporary lighting or not. So that was kind of the main push, so once again, the Main Street program won't happen yet until parking is at least somewhat alleviated. Just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Where are employees parking now?
Everywhere.
Parking on
They
Main
feed the meter, they run out and feed the meter.
And I wonder if have habits changed at all since the meters have been checked more regularly? Have there been any changes since?
So actually, as a, we're right in the front of Main Street, and I'm not sure how regularly it's checked, actually. I don't see him very often, but I'm not always looking out the window either.
Right.
So I don't know, I looked at the town report 2018, and there was a figure, I think it was like $69,000 brought in. Now, whether that's more or less than this year or the same time frame, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit, so I'll have some comments. So I hate that the economic committee, is disbanding, and it became a Main Street program. And in my opinion, obviously it affects me as a Main Street owner, but we're all of Plymouth, right? Tenny Mountain, what's the plan for that development? The other thing that I have concerns about, was in discussing an economic development, kind of shooting around, Bonnie was there, different ideas. It occurred to me that all those ideas were in the master plan under economic development. And I can't speak for you, Bill, but the select boards weren't aware of that. And so I found that very curious. So I brought copies in of the economic development piece of the master plan. And so that also got me thinking of the whole zoning conversations last time. Will we be in that same place? And I don't know enough, but is the zoning board aware of the changes that we saw should be made? And should we be doing this in partnership with them or vice versa? Or I'm not sure how that works either.
I think fortunately with the zoning board, their job is to take the zoning ordinance and determine when a waiver is within, they have a very specific criteria to decide whether they're gonna issue waivers or special exceptions to the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So it's deliberately kept separate, that the people issuing special exceptions and waivers are kept different than
makes
us,
sense.
who are making the rules. So we're not both making the rules and breaking them.
I'm
at
just
least not
wondering then,
intentionally,
do they have input? And I don't know if they had input during the master plan. Are they bumping up against things when they go to approve that maybe we should be including?
think-
we as the
yeah.
master plan folks as well.
I think we hear about that definitely through Brian and Jack as a member of the zoning board as well. So hopefully we have enough cross-pollination, and I think there was talk of doing a joint meeting at some
Yes.
point.
Yeah. But I think Marianne's, I don't know if this is exactly the point you're trying to make, but a lot of those things in the master plan, there's several entities that are responsible. And usually there's a lead, but we're coming, up against this right now with the Conservation Commission, realizing that, there's several entities. So I think at some point, we're gonna have to figure out how to get various people together, various groups together.
Yep. And I think with the boards that we are on, a few of you are on multiple boards and stuff. I think that's where that point of coming together is. Trying to get two boards together is gonna be really difficult. I know most of us are kind of donating as much time as we can right now, but I think that's where having this serving on multiple boards is really helpful too. But I think that's a good point, is how can I think we have a hard enough time keeping track of the implementation chapter of the master plan. How can we get those other people talk about electing somebody to something when they're not here. We've done that in a huge way in the implementation section. We've assigned a ton of stuff to different boards and haven't really told them, be like, hey, you're responsible for this. So we need to make sure that that communication is happening. So.
Those are all my
That's great.
comments, questions.
No,
and
that's great. I
concerns.
think that I do think it's too bad that the commission can't continue beyond Main
Yeah.
Street.
And why
I
can't
agree.
it? We just,
Two disparate interests, I guess.
Well, it sounds like it's maybe easiest to get the participation of the local business owners that are mostly
Right.
centered on Main Street, whereas, the businesses that are a little more spread diffusely around town, or even the ones on Tenny, or especially on Tenny Mountain, there's probably a lot of not present business owners. So,
So how do we capture that other side, right? There's Main Street, and I think, and I don't know, fairly new, 7 years. Do we focus too much on that, right? And there's only so much growth there, right? We're pretty tapped out. So from one of the biggest concerns as well that people said during our first meeting with developers and owners all around was taxes, right? The tax rate. So I don't think Main Street is gonna, I don't know, right, is gonna contribute to that, right? We're once again, we're sort of tapped out. We have a few more businesses, great. But as far as having, and maybe there won't be anything from that perspective, bringing on new businesses, especially in the Tenny Mountain area, will that actually hit our taxes at all? And how are we planning for it? And maybe that's not the planning board. Is it part of that economic development group that no longer exists? Is it something completely? I don't know. I keep looking at you, Bill.
So, actually, Mike is assigned to that. I thought the Economic Development Group is still viable.
So, Bonnie, you can, if you heard the same thing, was that it was a short-lived group. And then, I think, once again, I think the concentration was on Main Street, and they would then go off and do whatever Main Street does, Main Street business owners. And that pretty much ended up being the focus. And parking obviously took over that whole discussion.
Yeah, and as far as Main Street, you're right. I mean, you're not gonna put anything more in. If somebody was out of business, somebody may come in and take their spot, but there's really no more room to put any additional in. But as far as Tenny Mountain, I think these different businesses and companies are gonna look and see, okay, there's Market Basket, there's this, there's that, and they'll see the potential for something else, because that's the only place to go now.
But how do we market that, right? I've done some research, and there certainly are, the state does it, some cities and towns do it, right? They have somebody actually actively involved in selling their towns, right? Here, we love Plymouth, here's why you should bring your business here.
Wasn't Mike, wasn't he saying he was putting something on the computer to put out there about how Plymouth was, welcoming and what we had to offer them, and that we're welcoming businesses, and he had a whole thing he was gonna do.
I believe you're correct.
Right.
I'm not sure in that realm where it once again, that it broke off into a Main Street program. I don't know if there are some other economic development group outside of that.
You know, the other night I remember this, I came to the Board of Selectmen, and one of the things I talked about was the mountain bike community, and how right now, there's all these major trail systems being developed all around Plymouth, and plus the big one up in the Northeast Kingdoms, Kingdom Trails, which has revitalized that town, Burke, Vermont. And that's the kind of it's kind of an umbrella economic development. To promote something like that could bring a ton of business to the businesses that are already in town.
Right.
And so those kind of things, and plus that fits into our stated mission of being an eco-tourism destination.
Right.
Exactly.
There's still a lot of things on the back burner too. Did I interrupt?
Oh,
But,
no, I was trying to reach a natural point in the pause in the conversation so I could acknowledge
okay.
Frank.
But-
So please continue and then,
So, talk about like East Main Street. I always have to go north, south, east, west. But,
Yeah.
and, and that would open up additional areas to perhaps put businesses in, also have an access to the rear end of businesses along South Main Street. Also the need, we were talking about in addition to parking on that open like sand lot, but also looking at alternative parking areas along Main Street or North Main, or where does North Main begin? But in any event, in front of Silver. That area.
Oh,
maybe
right, there are a couple
changing the parallel
parking spots there.
to diagonal parking, and so there's additional solutions other than just that.
Right. It
sand
just
lot.
seemed that area was 50 as opposed to across the Silver Center was about 3 additional ones, by changing the diagonal.
It was three?
3,
Ooh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Sorry.
But anyway, there's still a few things on the back burner.
Great.
Frank?
Yes, I think I can help tie in all of these. One, I'm the one who did the inventory of parking Main Street a couple, 20 years ago. I'm going to be re-inventorying the village commercial downtown area for the parking. And while the economic development group, so-called, and our direction effort is still going on, one of my also projects is to inventory our existing business community for Main Street and look how the types of industry sectors that we could use to enhance what we already have. You're not going to get a large square foot type of business on Main Street. That would be definitely Tenny Mountain Highway. But there are a lot of high-tech, high-volume, high-price business potentials for Main Street, Plymouth, and basically spinning off of the academic industry that we have in town. So our primary industries are academic, medical, retail sales service, professional services, agricultural, and tourism and recreation. Those are the chief sectors in the town of Plymouth. So professional services are anything that requires a license. Banking, lawyers, psychologists, insurance agents. That's the kind of mix that we have right now. And in a profile for a Main Street business community to work effectively, you have to have a balance of those professions that work with themselves and, interconnect. Obviously, to do the parking, if we're going to try to get people to come to Plymouth, we need to provide that parking. And then we need, once they get out of the car, we need to make sure that the sidewalks connect them to where they need to go. So our initial energies right now is to do the inventory again, and obviously once the snow flies, look to see where we can do an immediate action, and that's that area at the highway department that could be a low dollar immediate, and the fact that it's owned by the town, the design and approval process is all within the owner, and so that can happen. The only other place that could happen is private property ownership within Main Street. Anything else has multiple government ownerships, and then you need to go through a whole litany of processes, which may take a year or two. But, so that was our effort on that meeting, is to, we focusing on the parking. We're still very much interested in economic development, and yeah, we have a twofold area. One is our downtown area, and then the other is Tenny Mountain Highway. But identifying the 20 sectors of industry and which ones fit Plymouth, and how do we enhance what we have to make that work better for us. So that's where we're at, and myself have initiated a program called All in the Name of Plymouth as our efforts for acknowledging Plymouth. There are 30 Plymouths in the United States and 6 in other countries. And I've got the printouts to all of them. And all of them have a main street, schools, businesses, people, and oddly enough, they have the same issues we're having. So I want to get in contact with them, see what they've got, how did they, what issues they used, and then also use that as a marketing element that we can connect with Plymouth, Mass, Wisconsin, California, wherever, and then have the community get involved with acknowledging, accepting, and appreciating Plymouth as we are and who we are. So that economic development effort hasn't gone away. It's just that we're waiting for spring to get through here and start working on our primary issue, which was the employee parking. Because right now we have 115 businesses on Main Street. That's 330 cars that come to work, and there's only 200 and some spaces. So our Main Street was designed before vehicles and on-site parking, and so most businesses don't have the capability for on-site parking. So we have to deal with issues with off-site parking systems. So that's where we have to re-inventory, as I did, all of the regulatory elements in our own zoning as pertaining to parking systems downtown. And our downtown area includes 4 zones, agricultural, village commercial, multifamily, and civic institution. Each one of those has different specifications for parking.
Hey, Frank, I'm just going to stop you here. I think, thank you for your comments. I think we got the idea, and I think we're sort of zooming a little off topic, so thank you, though. And I will let you know that we did do a parking study for the master plan, so there is a copy of that. I think Brian should probably have that, where we did inventory parking spaces, and the person who did the study actually went back multiple times on different days, different times, things like that, so.
Brian has that, right? 'Cause I recall that being done in,
He should. I would like to see that stuff on the town website, so I will revisit that with him. So, it seems like all that supporting information I think would be really helpful, so. Okay, so that's the Economic Development Commission. I also, just to address another point, Marianne, that you said that a lot of times towns have a community development director, something like that.
Yes.
Where, I mean, it's a full-time job to be able
Definitely.
to communicate and coordinate and work with larger businesses that might come to town. We don't have that right now.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly a paid position type of
Yep,
thing.
and it is in the master plan, explore the possibility of creating a community development director position. So that's in
Done.
there. Yeah. So,
You've explored.
that'd be nice. So that's in there. It's something that, I mean, I think that's more of a select board,
Absolutely.
town administrator type of deal. But,
Yeah, I was going to say that I thought Paul had a lot to do, Paul Freitas. He has a lot to do with contacting businesses, doesn't he, and trying to, persuade them that maybe Plymouth would be good for them.
yeah.
And that's what the understanding I had, maybe I'm wrong.
And also in collaboration with Brian, too. I mean, Brian had a lot put on his plate when he got the new position.
Yeah, right.
And then looking at maybe intern help, but I don't think an intern help would be that responsible.
Yeah,
So-
maybe not.
I think also sort of the transition, you see a lot of towns, a lot of them larger than ours, but I know Meredith has a community development director, the transition away from having a planner versus a community development director. The idea is they're trying to, I don't want to say court new business, but coordinate and communicate with new businesses, and in addition to, you know, dealing with a whole bunch of, you know, federal and state grants that are available and things like that. And that's the position that would do something like that. So, yeah. All right, so we got the Economic Development Commission. Anything from the Conservation Commission?
We were gonna delve into start with the master plan on our last meeting, which was Tuesday, but, Lisa wasn't there. We had a guest speaker, so we postponed that till next month, but, you know, we'll start figuring out how to work our way through that.
Any updates from the Select Board?
I'm the new appointee to the planning board,
Yay!
also the Conservation Commission.
All right.
2 meetings this week.
All right.
What else? I think, I can't think of anything.
Okay. And we try and do this, I guess it's a relatively new thing. We try and do it at work sessions, but I don't think we did it last time. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but, so we're trying to dedicate every work session to master plan implementation.
Right.
And then also have our communications from other board members, or board members that are on other boards. And Jack is on ZBA, but he's not here tonight to give us an update.
How far along are you on the,
We got it all done.
thank God.
For master plan too.
I wasn't here the last work session, but right now we're,
Is that when it got done?
yeah, we got done with that. Yeah. What are you saying, Bill? Does anyone want to summarize what was talked about at the work session?
Well, what I remember of it was a lot of talk about the zoning areas and where they wanted to change some, or, you know, I didn't quite understand all of it because it all looked to me like, you know, the old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I just didn't, the one thing that they did do is down by Green Street, or right along there, was a little strip that was agricultural, and decided that should be like for the village town businesses, whatever.
Village
'Cause
commercial,
yeah, it just made sense, that one little strip, you know. But other than that, we didn't really, you know, decide to change anything.
So we're looking at zones, and I think the near-term goal is to get some objectives and purposes behind each of the zones, which you'll see in other zoning ordinances, just to sort of have a better, ideally help the ZBA look and be like, okay, what's the purpose of the zone? And it is one of the objectives of this.
One thing that Steve did show us last time that was pretty cool was, I forgot what town it was, but do you remember, Bridget?
Might have been Dover.
Yeah, for every zone, they have like a information sheet, and it was pretty detailed, but it was all contained to one sheet, and it looked like it would be very helpful, because it explained, you know, not only the boundaries of that zone, but also everything that, you know, all the uses of the zone and the philosophy behind that zone. So, you know, in that way, if someone had a question about a zone, you could just give them that
Right.
sheet.
Yeah. I think it also will help applicants just be able to speak our language a little bit more, you know, especially if we get people that aren't coming in with engineers and architects that have a ton of experience working with town boards, but, you know, we see some people that don't, so that they can give them a little more information so they know what we're looking for. I think that helps too, so.
Well, and we also talked about the possible adoption of form-based codes instead of use-based codes.
I don't know if I understand that.
Well, form-based codes have more to do with the appearance rather than the use.
So, like certain minimum design,
Yeah,
Plymouth downtown standard, or?
something like that.
Yeah, so you have
I'm
standards, so you're not, you can't just come in with a building that really doesn't fit
Yep.
and changes the character. It keeps your town, you have a certain character, and you make sure you stay within that character. So it could be something like, you know, buildings can only be 2 stories high, and the second floor can be living space, you know, apartment space, the bottom floor is commercial, that type of thing.
What we've talked around quite a bit is, it really is the whole idea of manufacture of goods sold on premises, which we changed to definition. Right, or we just removed the
We just
definition.
removed it, yeah.
Because the whole site plan review process catches all the idea of like what's gonna be something that's, noxious for neighbors, emitting odors and things. That should be caught in the site plan review process. So we've sort of talked around, the fewer uses we have, because we have such a specific set of uses that so often we get things that don't quite fit in anything. So I think that's where the form-based versus the use-based kind of comes in a little bit, is still, obviously, we have the site plan review process, but seeing how things fit within the existing space where it's proposed, so.
Okay. So where are we with this? Or,
It's in
We're
discussion.
still in the talking phase. We might be there for a little while.
okay, good. Glad I joined then.
In talking to Steve, this is, whether we're doing a small, tiny changes to our zoning ordinance or a massive overhaul. And really, are we going to get this done in a year or 2 years is kind of what we're talking about, so. Yeah. I can send you that document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? I don't have anything master plan specific, so to go over unless anyone else has anything else they want to discuss or bring up. Steve won't be here for the next work session, but I'm going to try and meet with him and Grace beforehand, so kind of get on the same page about the discussion, so.
Grace Garvey? Or what?
Yes, yeah, so she's been helping with some of the facilitation.
Okay.
So, yeah. She's been pretty instrumental in trying to get more volunteers, and at this point, she's volunteered, so, yeah.
She's succeeded.
Yes.
Yeah. Recognizing that this is a massive undertaking, and it's more than just us,
Good.
because a lot of us have other things that we do aside from planning board.
I suppose I better revisit the online versions of the planning board and make sure I'm all caught up.
I wonder, does Franklin have a town
City.
developer, city? I mean.
They have a planner who lives here in Plymouth.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I mean, there's been so much revitalization there. Is there, what's making our movement seem so slow in comparison? I'm new.
What part do you think is slow?
Well, the parking, for one, has been an issue forever, right?
Since the beginning of time.
Since the beginning of time. Main Street continues to look nice, but there's not any significant surgence.
Part of Main Street looks nice.
Part of
Yeah.
Main, yeah.
I mean, you're probably used to it,
Yeah.
the half trees, the bricks that might
Yeah,
be.
Right, right.
I know. I mean, it just seems like we could do better.
Well,
I think
didn't-
that's where the
didn't wanna
Main
put
Street
that
program
in
is
your
supposed to
mind.
come into, sorry, Bill.
No, that's true, that Main Street program, but also, there used to be like a Main Street program that was very effective, and, that kind of got disbanded, and there was no money to support it,
Right.
so.
And we don't really have we've been reducing our paid staff to do these sorts of things. And I wonder what impact that has. I mean, like you said, Brian's plate is really full. So
That's-
we're approaching this in these volunteer board capacities that just doesn't seem like it's working too efficiently.
I'm not saying there's like a cheap solution to everything, but at least the downtown revitalization, it could be just a dynamic person that might be, having a business on Main Street that might be able to go forward with something to encourage other businesses to.
You're right. Well, I'm actually hoping that the whole parking issue will sort of invigorate that, right? If we as business owners actually see the town going, yep, we recognize it and we're doing something about it, I'm hoping someone does step forward, and because I think everybody else agrees, and there were plenty of the people that showed up, plenty of business owners. There was probably at least 25 of them, which I thought for that hour
That's a
was
great
pretty
turnout.
good. And we certainly all came to consensus about the parking, but I think those 25 people, whether they came for just parking, but I think that they would be willing to resurrect that Main Street program, and whatever that looked like, hopefully to pot plants and get rid of trees and,
Pot plants?
Sorry, did I say that? That's my other.
After this legislative
It's gonna
session.
take so long that will be legal by the time it,
Yeah.
So that's certainly my hope.
I think that's great.
And I think what undid the old, that was Mary Lisa O'Connor who did that.
Actually went back to Jeannie Forrester, too.
Yeah.
And she was like the head of the Main Street development thing or something.
And I think partly what, particularly all the potted plants, the flowers and the street trees, almost all those things were a constant target of vandalism. And, I think what we need, is a tree committee, because nobody really knows trees, so they got those crappy Bradford pears, and we have this aversion to putting big street trees on the street because we don't want big trees here, but you do want big trees above the wires that have a canopy. There's these new elms that seem like they're, really going to, we have them already, but, I think we need someone that knows trees, because I think that, big trees make a Main Street. And we have to plan ahead, and we are tearing up our Main Street pretty soon. I guess apparently we're not doing it this year, but when that happens, that would be a nice time to start thinking about more of a permanent tree solution rather than these little stick trees that then we cut them off and have sculpture out there, tree sculpture.
Well, the problem is too, though, power lines. So you got power lines that run down there. It's out of our hands to maintain those trees.
Yeah, and
The
unfortunately,
electric cooperative will come through and zip zap and boom, it's like, you gotta have a tree.
and that's why those Bradford pear trees were a terrible choice. We should have had a tree that has a canopy above the wires, like we used to have, and
That
prune them
would
accordingly and take care of
Probably
them.
need to negotiate with the power company in order, because they weren't very supportive of putting in, a larger tree.
No, I know, when they were
Right.
here, and that's the difference between someone who thinks in terms of power lines versus someone who thinks in terms of trees. They don't know about trees, they just know they're an inconvenience.
That guy knew about trees.
Yeah, he did. He seemed to.
Well, but, he had a very narrow vision of what a tree should be. A tree in his is impermanent. As soon as it's inconvenient, you remove it.
Those
I think we're also
syringes,
scrambling from the loss of, this is a 50-year-old issue, but at one point we had elms and chestnuts. We have chestnuts up here too?
chestnuts, yeah.
And they,
No, apparently not, because of the fact that they have the.
Not as a street tree.
Yeah.
Well,
they were street trees. But they went in before there were power lines going to all those buildings, and then those came down, and at the same time, there were probably a whole bunch of wires, and it just becomes a different issue when you get trees going through the power lines. You can't just plant a tree that's got a diameter that's this big and have the canopy be above the.
No, you gotta prune it. You
Yeah.
gotta keep, plant it in the appropriate place and prune it.
Too bad we can't just put the lines underground.
Put them underground, and we're digging up the street, we could do that. Short-term cost, but in the long term, it's a lot less maintenance.
So there's a lot of things.
And we did that to North Main Street, right? The wires are underground, aren't they?
I don't know.
So,
Let's take a look. I thought we had done that on North Main Street.
It's on the other side of the street.
anything else? Anything else like a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All right.
All right,